Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. I am your host, Denny Foster. Okay, I'm not Denny Foster, but I did play him on TV. So, how's everybody doing today? We have an interesting show today. We're going to cover a lot of the news and just catch up on what's been going on in the industry. But tomorrow, we're going to have a guest. We're going to have Tom Raish. He's going to come on, and we are going to talk about his upcoming series, or his ongoing series, Black Alpha. I'm not a Foster, but I played one on TV. Close. Denny Foster. But anyway, but Tom Raish is going to be on tomorrow night at our 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 o'clock Eastern show. We'll be talking to him. He's a Marvel Comics artist, and he's got his own series that he's doing a Kickstarter on. So we'll talk with Tom and see how he does his work and what he's got going on. So looking forward to having that conversation. We had a great show yesterday. If you missed it, we had Kara Nicole, also known as AZ Power Girl. You can catch that on our YouTube page if you missed it yesterday. And remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. You know, if you're watching and you want to keep track, I'm here 3 times a week with this show. I'm also here for in-stores this week. You want to follow it? Hit the like and subscribe buttons and join us off and get into the conversation. We are going to talk about the 2 big news stories today, both involving comics. One is casting. The first one has to do with Deadline is reporting that Leslie Grace has been cast as Barbara Gordon for the upcoming Batgirl movie. Now, Grace is coming off a breakout performance in the Heights. She was really kind of one of the big hits in that movie. And the film is going to be interesting because it's actually going to debut on HBO Max. This isn't a day and date in theater and stuff. This is a movie being made for HBO Max, which is going to be the first major DC property to debut exclusively on HBO Max. I mean, yes, Doom Patrol and Titans debuted on that, but it wasn't HBO Max, it was DC Universe. So they haven't actually had a DC property that's specifically going to HBO Max, and this will be the first. Now, it's going to be directed by, I'm going to try to do these names, Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah will be the directing duo, and it's from a script by Christina Hodson. So I'm kind of curious to see how this is going to work out. Now, In the Heights also debuted on HBO Max, so they're kind of keeping in the family, pulling her from that show. But other actors were tested, actresses were tested, and some of the names were Isabella Merced, Zoe Deutsch, and Haley Lou Richardson. All had a chance at it, but Leslie Grace won out. They're saying her audition just nailed it. So. Now, Barbara Gordon is going to be the Batgirl in the series, but she wasn't the first and she wasn't the last Batgirl. The first was actually Betty Kane, who was introduced in Batman number 139 in 1961 by Bill Finger and Sheldon Moldoff. But she kind of came in and out for a while and faded away. So in 1967, the Batman TV series was out. And William Dozier, the producer of the Batman TV series, reached out to Julius Schwartz, the editor over at DC, and said that he'd really like to have a female counterpart, a female character opposite of Batman and Robin. So they wanted to bring that in, and they wanted to come up with a character that they could introduce in both the comics and the TV show at the same time. So Schwartz turned to Gardner Fox and Carmine Infantino, and they did a revamp of Batgirl, tying her into Commissioner Gordon, making her Commissioner Gordon's daughter, Barbara Gordon. And she debuted in the 3rd season of the Batman TV series, but she also debuted in Detective Comics number 359 in 1967, which I believe is her technical first appearance. She appeared there first, and then on the TV show shortly after. So this is a case where, we have cases like where Harley Quinn was created on the animated series and brought into the comics. Livewire was as well. Mr. Freeze's backstory was really created in the animated series and then brought back into the comics, even though he was created in the comics. This is a case where, and there's a few other characters like it that were created for the TV series. This just happened to be one that they did it simultaneously. So they made a new Batgirl for the TV show and debuted her in the comics at the same time. That's who, but most of us, that's who Batgirl is. We think of Barbara Gordon as Batgirl. Cassandra Cain has been a Batgirl more recently. And like I said, Betty Kane, who's tied, of course, to Batwoman, who is Kate Kane. I think it's like niece and something like that. It's kind of the same Batman-Robin dynamic they were trying to go for there. But, so yeah, they've cast Barbara Gordon. It's Leslie Grace from In the Heights. And I don't know anything about her. I don't know her background. I haven't seen In the Heights. I want to. I'm a big fan of Hamilton. Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's his music, so I want to watch it, but I didn't get a chance to yet. So I plan on watching it. Now I've got even more of a reason. In a second bit of casting news, Marvel's borrowing from DC in a sense. We know that She-Hulk should start filming soon because we're getting more and more idea of casting for that. We got this weird confirmation through Twitter that Jamel Jamil is being in the show. She showed off a training video and talked about She-Hulk. So that confirmed that she's going to be in the show, just not which role. We know Tatiana Maslany from Orphan Black and Perry Mason is going to be the main character. Renee Elise Goldsberry, who was also in Hamilton, is going to be in the series. Ginger Gonzaga, Mark Ruffalo, who's going to be reprising his role as Bruce Banner, which, if you know anything about She-Hulk, it's a blood transfusion from Bruce Banner, who's her cousin, is what gives Jennifer Walters the ability to be She-Hulk. So that's likely to come up again. So he'll be reprising it. Ruffalo will be there to play Bruce Banner, maybe the Hulk. Also, Tim Roth is coming back. We know that as Emil Blonsky, a.k.a. The Abomination. But we're going to get him a little sooner as he will be appearing in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which we've seen in the trailer for that. And there's also talk of Megan Thee Stallion, the rapper, appearing as herself in the series. So that should be interesting. But the news for today is that Deadline is reporting that Arrow alum Josh Segarra will be joining the series as an unspecified role. They haven't said which yet. But if you are an Arrow fan, you'll remember him and season 5 is kind of the big bad. He played Adrian Chase. And in the series, Adrian Chase is Prometheus. I know in the comics, Adrian Chase is the Vigilante. And they did introduce the Vigilante in season 5 as well, but they did a little bait and switch so that fans weren't, comic fans weren't ahead of everybody else. So, because it was supposed to be a big mystery. And in the TV series, Adrian Chase is not Vigilante. He's actually Prometheus. But Segarra was probably one of the highlights of that season. I mean, and that's not saying it was a bad season. Actually, season 5 was probably one of the better seasons, and part of that was Segarra and his interactions with Stephen Amell. They worked really well together, and he played a very good villain. He's popped up a couple more times in the series, but overall, season 5 was his thing. And now he's being added to the She-Hulk series, and I can't wait to see what he does in it. Like I said, I think he's a good actor, and it's going to be interesting to see him joining the cast. All right, other news today, we got the voice actors listed for the upcoming Injustice film. They're doing an animated DC Injustice where Warner Brothers released it. I think the Hollywood Reporter were the first ones to have it. But speaking of Green Arrow, the first name, of course, is Superman, and he's being played by Justin Hartley. And Justin Hartley, who now is known mainly for This Is Us, that's the name of the series. the big NBC series. But before that, he played Green Arrow, Oliver Queen on Smallville. So Batman is going to be voiced by Anson Mount, who you'll know from playing Commander Pike or Captain Pike on Star Trek Discovery. He also played Black Bolt in the ill-fated Inhumans series for Marvel. Laura Bailey is going to be playing Lois Lane. Laura Bailey, of course, is one of the cast of Critical Role. And she's also playing Rama Kushna. Zach Callison will be Damian and Jimmy Olsen. Brian T. Delaney as Green Lantern. Brandon Michael Hall as Cyborg. Edwin Hodge. Let me stop that for a second. Sorry about that. I usually turn my phone off before I broadcast. Edwin Hodge is going to be Mr. Terrific and Killer Croc. Oliver Hudson is Plastic Man. Jillian Jacobs is Harley Quinn. Yuri Lowenthal is Mirror Master, Flash, and Shazam. He's going to be doing a lot of work. Derek Phillips will be Nightwing and Aquaman. Kevin Pollak, the actor, the whole 9 yards, stuff like that. He's also a great voice impersonator. Kevin Pollak will be Joker and Jonathan Kent. Normally you don't think of those two characters together. Anika Noni Rose will be Catwoman. Reed Scott as Green Arrow. Victor Zaz. Farron Tahir will be Ra's al Ghul. Fred Tatasciore as Captain Atom. Janet Varney as Wonder Woman. And Andrew Morgado as one of Mirror Master's soldiers. But they gave us that nice big long list of names, and it's interesting to me that they've got Justin Hartley to play Superman in a show that does have Green Arrow in it. Kind of think they would just keep him as Green Arrow, but Injustice, of course, is the very dark video game, and there's been a comic series involved in it too that basically is what if Superman basically lost it. Lois Lane is killed, Superman loses it, and it becomes a dictator, and a lot of heroes fighting heroes. It's going to be a very adult TV series or movie. More interesting news today. Netflix released viewing data for some of their original series, and Sweet Tooth, season 1 of Sweet Tooth, based on the comic by Jeff Lemire, is their most watched show that premiered during the second quarter of 2021. At least that's what they're reporting. This is according to the Hollywood Reporter, that they received over 60 million views, which is just shy of what they said the Queen's Gambit had gotten in 2020, which was 62 million views. That makes Sweet Tooth the number one, with shows like Shadow and Bone and Lupin coming in with like 55 and 54 million after that. But where it gets tricky is that their CEO, Reed Hastings, he explained how they're currently keeping track of their viewership, what counts as a view or a full view. And before, it used to be 70%. If they watched 70% of a show, it counted as a full view. Now, basically, if you turn on a show and watch it for 2 or more minutes, it's counted as a full view. 2 minutes. So if you turn something on, let it run just through the opening credits, and then go, no, this looks like crap, turn it off, you're a viewer. You count as the ratings, which doesn't seem right to me. 70%, if they don't want to go that high, is one thing, but 2 minutes? That seems ridiculously low. It seems like maybe half, or maybe at least a third. But I mean, if it's a 6-minute show, yeah, 2 minutes sounds great. But yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. Facebook is 3 seconds. Jeez. Oh, Anson Mount was great. I'm working from stuff, but I didn't see the Anson Mount was great in Hell on Wheels too. He's also fun on Twitter. So if you want someone to follow him on Twitter. He's actually a lot of fun. And he's got a cute dog, but you know. So 3 seconds on Facebook counts as a view. Jeez. Huh. Definitely guys are the ones that came up with those numbers. So, yeah, I'm not sure how to feel about that. I think that seems way too short to me. Like there needs to be more. If it's a 48-minute show, then at least 15 minutes, something. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. We've got a tweet today from the original Wheel of Time account. Wheel of Time being the book series that's being turned into an Amazon Prime series. And even though well, okay, Wheel of Time hasn't come out yet, but the production of the second season supposedly started on July 19th. So we don't have a release date for for season 1. We don't have any like trailers for it or anything else, and they're already moving on to start on season 2. Now, that seems really fast. I don't know if it was part of the deal they made with the Robert Jordan estate. Robert Jordan is the author of the series. He started it back in 1990. It's a huge book series, incredibly popular. And Jordan passed away in 2007, leaving the series undone. Author Brandon Sanderson, who, great author. I'm a big fan of his Mistborn series. He's got some amazing books. He writes very well detailed heroes and how powers work, stuff like that. Well, he took over the series and finished it. Now, I haven't read the Wheel of Time series, but I've got a couple friends of mine who have. And it's kind of an interesting thing in that each time I've thought about starting the series and talked to one of them, they've told me not to. They refer to it as one of the best series they hate reading. That it's frustrating how long it took between books, the fact that it had to be finished by somebody else, and just a lot of negativity about everything around the series. But the book itself, they say it's great. It's a great concept. And this has been in kind of production hell for a while. I remember, I don't know how many years ago now, but there was one night, I think it was on Fox, they suddenly released a pilot episode for a Wheel of a Time series that I think Billy Zane was in it, but it was released at like 3 a.m. with no hype, no announcement. It just appeared, and I just happened to catch it. I wasn't even sure what it was, and then I ended up covering it in the news the next day. And what it was is they were basically trying to keep the rights. They were doing a quick, oh yeah, we aired it. It was on the air, So this has been a really touchy property. A lot of, people wanting to get it done. It's a very convoluted property. There's a lot of story to it. So it's kind of Lord of the Rings in the sense that doing like one movie would be almost impossible. So maybe there's a guarantee that they're going to do X number of seasons. We will have to see. But so production on season 2 has started as of 2 days ago, and we still have yet to know when season 1 is going to come out, which could be a good thing. So maybe if it comes out and it's great, we don't have to wait a full year or 2 years for a second season. Maybe it'll be, boom, okay, 6 months from now, we got season 2. That would be neat. I would like that. It's like Loki. When the hell are we going to get a Loki season 2? Anybody? No idea? No. But if we can get done back to back like that, I'm all for it. Speaking of another series moving forward quickly, The Witcher. Now, we've got the second season coming up in December. And there's not been like an announcement or anything that a third season has been approved, but they did just do the Witcher Con. And there's a lot. They're doing an animated movie. They're putting a lot into The Witcher, Netflix is. Well, reports are coming out, and I don't know how valid these reports are, but it's popping up in enough places that it's worth noting that they're saying production on the third season has already begun. Now, when they say that, It doesn't mean filming. It means getting the writers into a room, doing scouting location. There's a bunch of stuff that happens before an actor ever steps foot on set. So saying they've begun production on season 3 could mean something as simple as they're getting the writers together again to try to break story, or they're putting the office together to run it, or something like that. It could be that early in the stages, but the fact that they're already moving forward, that means at least somebody is confident enough in how season 2 is going to go that they're already talking about season 3. But then, like I said, they're doing an animated movie. They're talking about a spin-off prequel series with Jason Momoa. So it's obvious that they've got a lot of confidence in the Witcher series. Now, season 2 is going to be adapting certain events and characters from Andrzej Sapkowski's Blood of the Elves and Time of Content. Sapkowski is the author of the series, as well as a couple of short stories from The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny. If you were a fan of The Witcher and you've played the video games and you've watched the show, but you haven't read the books, even though they weren't originally written in English, the translations are very well done, and the prose stories have a lot more humor and action adventure in them than I would have expected. And they don't necessarily ruin anything for the upcoming series. There's little changes, but overall, I actually read. There's the main novels, and then there's some short story books. I believe that's the what were the names on this? The Last Wish and the Sword of Destiny are the 2 short story collections. And you can read those because a lot of season 1 comes out of those. But there's a couple short stories left they're using for season 2. But all it'll do is kind of reinforce what we learned in season 1, maybe clarify certain things. I've really enjoyed, I listen to books. I do audiobooks instead of reading, because it's really hard for me just to sit down and not do something. So when I'm driving, I listen, or if I'm doing like photo editing or something like that, then I listen to books. So that's how I get through the end. I've done 2 of them, and they're absolutely great. And I'm going to continue. I think they're really well done. So if you want more Witcher in your life and you can't wait for the animated movie next month or the series in December, grab some of the novels. Now, speaking of the animated movie that's coming out next month, Witcher Nightmare of the Wolf, well, a teaser trailer was released, and you can find that on YouTube. And also the voice cast was announced. Now, the voices for this one, Vesemir will be voiced by Theo James. Tetra will be voiced by Laura Pulver. Daglin will be voiced by Graham McTavish. And Lady Zerbst will be voiced by Mary McDonnell. So those are some big named actors for this series. So Netflix is, they're putting some money into this. And the movie will be out on August 23rd. So you don't have that too long to wait. You got about a month. So that'll be coming soon. But I do recommend the books if you get a chance. Another series that just got greenlit is another Neil Gaiman series, which is interesting because American Gods didn't get to continue over on, I think it was Starz had American Gods, but Amazon Prime has just greenlit a 6-episode adaptation of Neil Gaiman's 2005 sequel spin-off novel, Anansi Boys. And, this is, it's Gaiman's gonna team up with the Good Omens season 1 director Douglas McKinnon, and they will act as the showrunners in the series, with Gaiman serving as a writer alongside Lenny Henry, who was the Anansi Boys audiobook director. Now, this series, the Anansi Boys, will follow Charlie Nancy, a young man who is used to being embarrassed by his estranged father. However, when his father dies, that's when Charlie discovers that his father is actually Anansi, the trickster god. And he learns that he has a brother, Spider, and he's now entering Charlie's life, determined to make it more interesting and a lot more dangerous. Now, it's expected that we're not going to see Orlando Jones. Orlando Jones played Mr. Nancy, Anansi in American Gods, so we probably won't see him reprise his role. And the ending of his, it was a little controversial when he got fired from the Starz series. I know there was a lot on Twitter about it. He was not happy about it, but it would be nice. I think Orlando Jones is a good actor, and I would love to see him back as Mr. Nancy, especially if he's playing, the deceased father. But we'll have to see how that works out. I'd like to see him back, but there's no word that he's going to reprise his role. This, of course, comes on the heels of Gaiman announcing a season 2 for Good Omens also being picked up by Amazon. So Amazon definitely seems to be going full force with the Neil Gaiman stuff. All right, where are we at? We're going to come up here to our break in just a minute here. So let me remind you guys that we've got Instagram and TikTok that you can follow us. I'm told I'm on TikTok, which is funny because I think I'm too old to be on TikTok, and I don't do a lot of dancing or anything. But you can find us over on TikTok and on Instagram at _EXP1. And we have like fun little videos. We give our schedule. We have our announcements and stuff like that. So join us there. Also, wherever you're watching it right now, do me a favor. Hit the like button or the thumbs up button, the subscribe button, whatever. Because, we want to know your viewers are out there. We want to know where you're watching this. So do me a favor. Hit those buttons. Let us know what's going on. And join in the conversation. All right? Let us know what you think. The rest of the show, I got some more to talk about, but if there's any questions you guys want, anything you want to know about, whether it's Loki or upcoming Marvel stuff, DC, whatever, just hit me up and I will do my best to answer it for you. So let's go ahead and take our commercial break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about Herogasm. Back in a minute.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. We are at our halfway point, and we've been covering the news, and this latest news kind of got me thinking, and this one I got a little more personal connection to. So let's cover the news part of it, and then I'll talk why I think there may be some BS in the story. All right, so season 3 of The Boys is going to have an episode focused on a story arc called Herogasm. Now, Herogasm, if you've read the comics, this is basically an annual vacation retreat where the heroes get to go and practice all of the debauchery they want without any ramifications. Basically, they get a bunch of prostitutes and drugs and alcohol and anything they want. It's like it's hedonism turned up to 1,000. This is basically so over the top that Caligula would blush. Okay, and of course this is a Garth Ennis written series. Garth writes this series specifically to shock people. He's taken your basic superheroes and he's turned the shock value up to like 50 because, 10 isn't high enough. Well, Herogasm may be one of the most raunchy, shock-filled stories that exists in the boys' pantheon, in all of it. Well, showrunner Eric Kripke says that, he says, I think when I first pitched it, I said, guys, here's the episode, and it's called Herogasm. And Andy Green and Katie Graves and the rest of the Amazon executives, I think they were just sort of sighing out of resignation, They're just like resigned. They're like, look, you've really proven yourself over 2 years. We knew it was only a matter of time. Now, he says, we'll make sure that while we're walking the right line, that we're outrageous, but not exploitive, of course. So there's probably will be a lot of self-censorship, but anyone who is a fan of the books and that particular volume of Herogasm, I can just tell you, you're definitely going to get the full Herogasm experience. There's just no question. I've got questions. I've got a lot of questions. Now, for those of you who don't know, who think I'm just the host of the show, I am a writer. And one of the things I've written recently is Dynamite asked me to adapt the first boys miniseries, Name of the Game, into a prose novel. That's it here, as you can see. Now, this isn't the same story as in the comics, or as in the TV series. This is based off of the comics. And the first series of the comic, which is the one that was done at DC, or Wildstorm, before Wildstorm went, oh, this is a little too much, canceled it, and it got picked up by Dynamite. The story was about the boys coming together, and instead of going after the Seven directly, they go after a group called the Teenage Kicks. And what they want to do is basically mess with the Teenage Kicks, force one of them off the team, and in such a way that lets the world know that the boys are back, basically. JD says, I got questions too, Steely Dan. Like, where's the babe you had on your show yesterday? Kara has her own thing going on. She was just here yesterday. So, but you can catch her on our YouTube video if you want to watch it. So, all right. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to the boys, because I had to adapt that first series. And while I did certain things expanding on it, so if you've read the first comic series, there is more to the novel. I dig more into Huey's backstory. Some of the stuff that Garth did later on in the books that weren't covered in the early ones, I pulled from that to kind of give us more detail on Huey, more details on Annie and her first time at the Seven's headquarters. I mean, in the comics, Annie was never meant to be a long-term character. She was just there for the shock value. And then Garth just kept writing her and kept adding her into scenes, and she became this bigger character. But originally she was just going to be there and then gone. Well, I had the room to play with, and I gave her more of a backstory. So there is added stuff, but at the same time, the last thing I wanted to do was deviate too much from the comics. So where I added in for color and background, I kept the basis of the story the same and tried to keep the heart of the story. Well, that becomes very difficult to do with some rather over-the-top and raunchy scenes. The relationship between Butcher and the head, or his contact at CIA, Rayner, were some of the hardest scenes to adapt, because the two of them absolutely hate each other, but were also in a sexual relationship that would be easily described as misogynistic and just dark and angry. And the scenes were really hard to describe in a novel, because with a comic you can do a single panel, hint at what you're thinking, and you let the reader's imagination fill in the rest. And that would happen as well in some of the scenes with the teenage kicks. There were scenes where they were doing these unthinkable, horrible things to show you that just because they were superheroes doesn't mean they were good. In most of the time, these were horrible people who just happened to have power and fame. Well, when you do it in prose, you have to describe more. You have to get into more detail because you don't have the pictures. You have to describe what someone's doing and whatnot. And the scenes become awkward. They're hard, how much do you say? How much do you not say? I mean, that was a difficult part of the book, especially the scenes with, like I said, Butcher and Rayner, and the scenes with the teenage kicks where we were showing just how bad they were. Well, the TV series has ramped all of that down a lot. I don't think the relationship, they skipped the teenage kicks altogether. The relationship between Rayner and Butcher is completely different. There's no sexual element to it at all. And it's a huge part of it in the comics, and, needed to be in the novel as well. So we're already seeing that they're downplaying a lot of that aspect. Now, don't get me wrong. The Boys is a great series. Eric Kripke is telling the story, and but when he says he's going to give the full Herogasm experience, I really have a hard time understanding how he's going to do that. Because the point of the Herogasm series, arc, was just to put that final nail in the coffin of anybody who might side with the heroes, anybody who might not think that Butcher and they needed to do that because what happens in the rest of the series. They needed to establish that these were really awful people. And Garth Ennis doesn't self-filter. Garth Ennis just always turns it up, and he's trying to shock you. So just like a shock jock, he's got to say the next thing has to be even more outlandish than the last. And Herogasm takes place well into the comic series. So at that point, he really had to up the scale as much as possible. So Herogasm is not a book I would openly show most people unless I knew they were a fan of the Boys. And I'm not saying it's bad. If that's what you want, it's fine. I just don't see how you take that and film it. How you keep that shock value at that level. I don't think he can. If he does, if he is able to pull it off, can he do it in a different way? Sure. But if he's talking about, his quote is, the full Herogasm experience. And I really don't know how you do that. How you get, I mean, some of those scenes, how you get actors to even be willing to film some of that stuff. It is a dark and raunchy, and I mean, this is NC. I mean, they talk about this is X-rated, not even NC-17. I don't know if Netflix would show some of the stuff that they show in there, and so I just question how they're going to be able to adapt that. Can they get the heart of the story? Can they get the point of the story? Yes, I'm sure they can. But they won't be able to, I don't think they'll be able to get just as extreme as it is. And it also is, it just seems like the purpose of it was to nail the coffin that these were not good people. These people did not have redemption in their future. Annie was probably the only one who had a chance. And yeah. But like I said, we've seen them tone things down. The opening scene with Annie and the Deep, what happens between the two of them in the TV series, that is a much more toned down version of what's in the comic. In the comic, the Deep isn't even involved, but it's three heroes forcing her to do things. It's Homelander, A-Train, and I don't remember who the third one was. Anyway, so yeah, that's my thought on that is I think Eric Kripke's a great writer. I think he's doing an amazing job with the series. And I think season 3 is probably going to be great. But just anytime he says he's going for the full Herogasm experience, you're right. I'm sorry, JD. You are correct. It's on Amazon. So, yeah, I don't think Amazon would show that either. So, you're correct. It is on Amazon Prime. It's not on Netflix. But, so, that's just my thought on that. I have a hard time believing that they will really be able to get even in the ballpark of what Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson did for Herogasm. So, all right, that covers the news mostly. And again, by the way, if you're interested, this book is available on Amazon in print and digitally. We don't have an ebook version of it. We were doing ebook versions of all the Dynamite books that we put out, but because of a contract with a company who was doing audio versions of the comic series, that we weren't able to do an audio book of this. So it would have been a lot of fun. Would have been fun to find someone who could do the Scottish accents and stuff. But no audiobook. But on Amazon, The Boys, Name of the Game, Dan Wickline. Check it out. It is a fun read. And it's also available in multiple languages. So if you see this overseas, it's out there. It's released internationally. So, all right. If you didn't catch it, normally we talk about Loki the day after or on Wednesday. We've been doing that for the last 6 weeks. And while there is no more Loki, last night, Marvel dropped their newest episode of Assembled, which International Dan Wickline has a nice ring to it. Well, thank you, JD. I kind of like that myself. International author, yes. Excuse me. But Assembled dropped last night, and I've been a fan of the behind-the-scenes stuff. I thought the first season of The Mandalorian had like an 8-episode show afterwards, and to me, that was fantastic. I can't get enough of the behind-the-scenes stuff. When I buy a Blu-ray or a DVD, I watch all the stuff on it. I watch all the back matter. So I'm that guy. So Assembled and the stuff they did with The Mandalorian, those are fantastic. And I watched all 8 episodes they did on The Mandalorian. Then they did the 1-hour one for season 2, and they didn't even touch on the season finale. And I was like, well, that's a little disappointing. But now that we've kind of established the 1-hour behind-the-scenes show, it's a little better understandable now. So WandaVisions was good. I loved getting to see another version of the Vision, because when they did the black and white version, where they're filming the black and white, they had to do a blue version of Vision for it to show up properly on the black and white, to look red on black and white. So we got to see a blue version of the Vision. I thought the Falcon and the Winter Soldier one was pretty good. I would like them to have actually addressed the cut subplot, but they kind of just let it go over their heads and, just pretend that it didn't happen. But the Loki one last night, or this morning is when I watched it, this is probably the best assembled they've done yet. Oh, Dan Wickline, International Writer of Words. That would be a lot to put on a business card. Have to continue it on the back, But so assembled last night, it was narrated by Tom Hiddleston, which just shows how much Hiddleston is invested in this show. He said he was 29 when he got cast as Loki, and when the show came out, he'd be 40. So that means he'd been doing 11 years. We'll make you business cards a choose-your-own-adventure. Yes. I like that. So Hiddleston has been playing this character for 11 years. But the behind-the-scenes went into a lot of great detail with Owen Wilson, with Jonathan Majors. So we got to see some of that stuff going on, why they chose a lot of the things they chose, the fighting styles between Sylvie, who is more self-taught, and Loki, who is more big arm, wide, elegant, and Ravonna Renslayer, who is more of a classically trained fighter and came up through the military, or B-15, who was more brute force and kind of charge and hit. So it is really a good series. It gets into a lot of interesting details. Jonathan Majors hints on we're still going to see various versions of Kang, which I think we've all kind of come to expect. But, he talked about how he really loved coming into He Who Remains because he could do it so differently and kind of establish this version of the character. So everything he does now kind of shows as an opposite of that, or plays differently from that. It's like creating a baseline in such a unique way, with such a humorous and crazy character. I mean, eccentric. It's a good word for the way to describe He Who Remains. I mean, spent way too much time on his own, which I totally understand. I've actually been thinking about repainting the walls in my office black with the little gold cracks in it. Thought that was kind of neat. Maybe take this window down, put a circle, have a visual thing of showing the lines of the timeline kind of going on. Yeah, I think that would be neat. Yeah, been alone way too long. Anyway, so I thought Assembled was done really well. And it's enjoyable. It's in like 63 minutes. So there's a little bit of credits in it, but I think the behind the scenes look is actually longer than any of the actual episodes. And I think that's consistent in all three series. The behind the scenes look is longer than the actual episodes. So. But it was pretty neat. I don't think it really gave you any. Well, I was going to say it doesn't give you anything we didn't see in the series, but there are clips of scenes being shot that didn't make the cut. There's an image of He Who Remains, who is just sitting on the floor in front of the fireplace, or Loki and Sylvie looking out the window at the timeline. Those things didn't make the cut, but you get to see them in the assembled footage. So it adds a little depth there. There was a nice interview with Richard E. Grant about how, Tom Hiddleston talks about how he was their first choice to play the role. They didn't really have a second choice. They weren't sure what they were going to do if he said no, because I mean, even in the previs art where they did the artwork and stuff to show what the character would look like, they used Richard E. Grant even before he signed on. They wanted Richard E. Grant. So, it's a good series. And if you haven't watched them, they're on Disney Plus. So if you already have Disney Plus and you've already watched Loki and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision, and you're not watching the behind the scenes stuff, I don't know why. Why wouldn't you? I mean, to me, that's some of the most fascinating aspects of these series is the filmmaking and the decisions and how it goes about. And they talk to Michael Waldron. They talk about some of the decisions made and how the scene in the time theater goes and how there's nothing for them to see. It's not like there was a TV up there showing the scenes they wanted to show. Kate Herron was standing there and telling them, okay, now we're seeing scenes from Thor the Dark World. You're telling Malekith where to go, or you're telling Curse where to go to get up to the castle, or so it was basically just, and then acting happened, and I thought it was pretty interesting, and also verify that Owen Wilson is actually wearing a wig through this series. That short haircut he has is actually a wig. He still has his longer blonde locks underneath. So the gray, all that was a decision. He did grow his own mustache, but the grayish hair, not even his. They probably collected it from my hairbrush, just put them all together. Happens when you get old. But so a mustache wig is problematic. I've tried to wear a mustache for scenes, and you put the spirit of gum on there, and you hope it stays, but it never guaranteed that it's going to stay. And the last thing you want to do is in the middle of a scene, you're pouring your heart out, you're talking to Loki, you're just telling the whole story about form and function of the jet ski, and you find out that one side of your mustache is hanging down, and you have to reshoot the whole scene. You don't want that. So if you can grow your own mustache, you absolutely should. So yeah, anytime you get the option to do it just yourself, it also saves time in the makeup trailer, which takes a lot longer than you would ever imagine. There is no simple time in the makeup trailer. Always takes forever. I did that for Dexter, and my call time was at 7:00 to start shooting at 10, just so they could make me look dead with a caved-in skull. 3-hour early call. Yeah, Kyle's life rule number 8. Anytime you can grow your own mustache, you should, just in general. Yeah, I think facial hair is a good choice. There are very few people that should keep clean shaven. Henry Cavill should stay clean shaven. Absolutely. Especially, I believe that's a Warner Brothers rule number 8. But other than that, most people should just grow a beard. So. All right. We're getting close to the end here. But again, we covered the news. If anybody has any last... Nope, we need a super stash. No, we don't need a super stash, Kyle. We never needed super stash. He didn't need it for Mission Impossible. That mustache was horrible. Nobody wears a mustache like that without a beard. He just had that big porn stash, and it didn't make no. And there's a reason it's called a porn stash or a cop stash, because those are the only people that wear it. That's where Tom Selleck keeps his scripts. He doesn't have a choice. He needs that because he can't remember his dialogue, and he has to keep his scripts nearby. That's the only reason Tom Selleck has that mustache. Plus, it became his trademark in the 80s, In the 80s, those mustaches were in style. They're not in style now. If you grew one in the 80s and you became known for that, Ron Jeremy has that mustache. He grew it in the 80s. He's also in porn. He can keep the mustache. Tom Selleck, it's his trademark. If you didn't grow one in the 80s, though, you shouldn't just have a mustache. When he shaved on that time on Friends, it was weird. Exactly. It's kind of like when Drew Carey got LASIK surgery and he didn't have his glasses and he tried to do, like, I think it was he was hosting The Price is Right and nobody knew who he was, you know? And then, so he started wearing glasses without any prescription just to kind of keep his trademark look. You get a look, you have to keep it. You know? It's like this hat. If I keep wearing this hat all the time, eventually I'm going to get stuck with it. Bob Ross. Bob Ross was broke when he started filming his show. He couldn't afford to get a regular haircut, so he figured he would save money by getting the perm because it would last longer. Well, once he got that perm and his show took off, it became him. It became the trademark, so he had to keep it. You know, and that's why he hated it. He absolutely hated that hair, but he kept it because that's what people knew him for. You know, if you saw Bob Ross without his perm, what would you even recognize him? Without that big hair? Happy, it became permanent. Thank you, JD. Well done. Birds live in his hair. Happy birds live in his hair. If you're talking Bob Ross, they have to be happy little birds that live in his hair. Please. All right, guys, that wraps up our show. Thank you for joining. I will be back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern, with Tom Rash to talk about his series Black Alpha. Everybody, have a great day. Stick around for whatever we have coming up next. It's probably Rex and the Not Nicks doing comic collectibles. Always assume that. But thank you, guys. Have a great day.